Hello, today I'm going to talk to you about the tragic and avoidable sinking of the MS Estonia. In this presentation I'm going to talk about firstly what happened exactly, then when it happened, I'll continue that by explaining why it happened, and finally I'll talk about what can be learned from this tragic event. Okay, so for starters, the MS Estonia was a ship built in 1979. It worked for most of the 80s without any incidents under other names. But then in the mid-90s, in 1994, it sank doing a crossing from Estonia to Sweden, in the middle of the Baltic Sea. This was Europe's deadliest shipwreck in periods of peace, thus not including wartime. The result was 852 casualties. In explaining the why, I'll get deeper into detail, but I'll leave it at saying that the main reason was a car deck flooding due to a bow visor malfunction. The bow visor refers to the bow doors, the one that opens to let vehicles in. Okay, so when exactly did this happen? This happened on a Wednesday, the 28th of September 1994, in the middle of the Baltic Sea. It was expected to go from Tallinn to Stockholm on a very strict schedule. It began to sink at about 5 to 1, but it ended sinking 10 to 2. This was a long, in most cases, process, but if you were on the boat, this happened before you could even realise it. The first Mayday calls were done at 1:22 a.m. Just goes to show the slow reaction time of the crew and how unavoidable it all was. Now, on to the why. The main reason was a poorly designed bow shape. This already having proven to be a problem on other ships of similar sizes and shapes, leaving it more prone to rollovers when the weight was non-properly assigned on the car bay. The next was the faulty visor sealing, this being the door that opens and closes to let cars out and in. What happened was that while sailing through the sea, the rough weather caused leaks to go into the hatch. Obviously it started out flooding with water, and the locks that keep it closed started to fail. Just before it started to sink and veer to the left, this bow door completely ripped off and fell into the sea, leaving the ship exposed to a constant and enormous flooding of water that flooded the whole car bay or deck. Obviously, the entry of water made the boat tip as it leaned more on the port side of the car bay. Next up, I'll talk about how slow and unorganized the crew reaction was. Have in mind this was the mid-90s, so it's not all as modernized as it is now, but what we can say is that the bridge was really slow to react as they couldn't see that the bow door torn away. Next, the rescue teams, when actually having to go and attend to people in lifeboats, had a mechanical failure on their helicopter, which caused them to be late 48 minutes. Then again, on human error, I'll talk about how Sweden was the country responsible for keeping all the facilities that were on the boat in case of emergencies functioning, but as lots of witnesses say and survivors, most of the lifeboats weren't working or the life jacket compartments weren't open. As you can see, this is the torn away bow door or visor, and on the right you can see the exact route that the ship took once the bow door ripped off. On to the consequences and what's changed after it. Well, on to the modern times, better crew training has been taken part and implemented in the ship industry to avoid casualties such as these again. Also, properly sealed visors on ro-ro ships have been implemented, this completely negating the possibility of something happening again. Also, there's been an improvement in lifeboat regulations, thus avoiding the repetition of an occasion on where they don't open or they're poorly overpainted so that then the survivors trying to open them cannot do so. This was a very tragic event, but has always been necessary for the industry to move on and improve. So hopefully this has been a small insight on what it was exactly that happened, although I must say I found a really helpful documentary, a 15-minute long documentary on the Discovery Channel that is posted on YouTube if you want more information. Thank you for listening, and this was all.